So here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Financial First Aid, hosted by yours truly, Vera McCoy. I'm so excited that you decided to join me for what I know will become a great resource for new and seasoned entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs, and even some 9-to-5ers. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor or an individual who has an idea that you want to transform into a business, Financial First Aid is here to help you move in the right direction, from idea to development to implementation. So today I have the honor of having Jennifer Griscom on my show. I'm so excited because she's a woman after my own heart. She's a real estate investor, a podcaster, an artist, creator of micro empires, and most importantly, a mom. That is the toughest job I know because I'm one. Jennifer is a woman that has filed bankruptcy twice. However, she did not let that stop her from developing financial freedom for herself and her family. So how are you today, Jennifer?
I'm great. What a great
Great.
intro. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Hey, you're just a fantastic guest to have on my show because my show is directed towards people like you. So please tell the audience about your background.
My background professionally is that I was somebody who was in sales, in healthcare technology sales for the majority of my career, which was, 25 years solid in and out of sales in every kind of level, any kind of thing that you could imagine. I'm a mother of two. I divorced when my children were 1 and 3. So I had sole custody and we moved across the country. So truly a very single mother. Um, I didn't get every other weekend off, but that was okay. And, my financial story, my financial mistakes, my financial story is relational. So my mistakes were not about buying expensive things or overspending or too much at Christmas. It was about turning my well-being over to someone else and living in financial chaos and having to learn those lessons very, very hard. And um, so that's what I did. That's what my show is about, micro empires and the story that I tell. But I think more importantly, I shared it because I think my story is not unique, but I do think it is kept a secret. I kept it a
Yes,
secret for many,
yes,
many years.
yes.
And I just got tired of it. And I decided I'm just going to tell people, especially because from the outside looking in, I looked like I had it all together and it was all going well. And I think that's part of our issue kind of as a culture, that we maintain the facade when it's really not necessary, or it shouldn't be.
I think you're absolutely right about that. So what happened to cause you to file bankruptcy the first time around?
Well, divorce is ugly. You may have heard. Um,
Unfortunately, I did that with the beginning of my legal career.
yep. And, some are uglier than others. I was going through a divorce in the state of California, and just to encapsulate it and make it pretty short, my ex-husband sued me 25 times in 10 years. And I amassed over $500,000 in attorney's fees.
Oh,
He sued not only me, he sued my brother, my sister. He sued everybody and anybody that he could. It all took place in California, and I was forced to go back to court every single time. So I was living at the time in New England, in Boston, flying across country to California several times a year to deal with court issues. Because of course we didn't have Zoom. We didn't have any of this stuff available.
yes.
Um, and so the first time I filed bankruptcy, I had been granted a divorce, given custody, moved to England, was working, had bought a piece of land and was building a house. And he continued to sue me. And at that point, he had also sued those family members I just mentioned. And it dawned on me, if I didn't have any money, that might protect me. And Chapter 13 bankruptcy at the time, I think the rules have changed, protected my primary home.
Right.
So I
Hmm.
finished building the house. And the very next day I moved in, and the very next day I filed Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which strategically stopped all of the lawsuits, even against my family, although he did continue those afterwards. But for me, stopped them dead for a solid year, protected my asset. Of course, what it did was ruin my credit. And, for 10 years, um, which was fun. So that is what happened. And it was the best solution because it just took away all of the power.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I had a good job and was making good money. I was in a home that I could afford. So the next step was having to survive, learning to survive on cash because your credit cards go away, everything goes away.
True. Right. So, so actually that was a great solution for your problem. Because after having built a home, who would want somebody to take that from you? Especially if you had two young children at the time. So then, what was the determining factor that made you know that bankruptcy was the best solution for you? Did you consult with an attorney, an accountant, or did you just do your own research and say, hey, listen, I can stop this crazy person from suing me, from all these lawsuits, and then decide to do it? How did that transpire?
Well, I think like most people, I did my own research. And again, remember this is, what year was this? 2002. So I did my own research. And then when I called a bankruptcy attorney finally and got them on the phone and told them all of my brilliant assessment of bankruptcy, they said to me, and where did you get all this nonsense from? So I advise anybody to speak to an attorney, a knowledgeable attorney. And very specifically, I know that you are an attorney. So very specifically, I think there are very different kinds of bankruptcy that are used as tools. And the only way to know what's best for you is to go, because I didn't know what Chapter 13 was. I didn't understand how it was structured. And that has changed since 2002. So, fortunately, it was a great vehicle for me to be able to keep the house, protect myself, protect my family for a period of time, and sort of get that monkey off my back. It creates other problems, but I welcomed those. Those were easy compared to what I was dealing with.
Exactly. Okay. So at the time when you filed, or the attorneys finally filed for you, how did you kind of feel about that? Did you feel, were you scared? Did you feel relieved? I mean, what was kind of the emotional,
Well, growing up in a culture of money family where you never spend more than you have, you never put anything on a credit card, people who carry debt are bad people. I had a ton of shame. I was really ashamed. I was really ashamed and afraid. And especially because in my marriage, I had lived in financial chaos. So what I had worked so hard for was to have stability, to have a good income, to never, not about money. I mean, I wasn't independently wealthy, but I was able to pay the bills and do so and have some breathing space. So I felt tremendous shame and embarrassment and like a failure. At the same time, I felt tremendous relief because it did stop the lawsuits. It stopped, it gave me the time I needed to breathe, and my family also the time that they needed to breathe. Although again, he did continue those lawsuits against my family as well. Yep.
He sounds like he was kind of a little nutcase there. I guess it seems like mostly, and I don't know, it's kind of all different for people in their marital situations, but sometimes it seems like the person that kind of goes off the rail has, control issues. And it sounds like he had a real control issue, and that kind of forced you into filing a bankruptcy, whether you wanted to or not. It's a good thing you did. So then
Very good thing I did.
Yeah. So then what happened the second time that made you decide to file?
Well, I had gone to California. At this point, I was completely out of money and represented myself.
Wow. Great.
Went pro se into the court system and basically cut a deal with my ex-husband that he would be paid an amount that I borrowed from my family. Because really he just wanted to punish me financially, paid an amount, and that he could never sue me again, which is very hard to get. But I spent probably 3 days sitting in a courtroom with his team of lawyers, no less than 4 lawyers on his side,
Wow.
writing up a document that was ironclad that he could never sue me again.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what were the basis of his lawsuits?
Well, he was just very angry. So mostly custody. He was very angry that I had won custody. We had gone through a psychological evaluation through the California court system, and I had been deemed the parent and given custody of the children, and he never really got over that. So it was mostly that and disputes over child support, and all of which I pretty much just walked away from. So I got that agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And then part of our agreement was that we would agree to what's called in California a special master. So basically a psychologist who kind of oversees like the children and the visitation, et cetera. And I didn't realize that the person that my ex-husband suggested was a father's rights activist.
No. Oh no.
Yeah. Because up until then, my experience had been with psychologists or whatever the title is that, they're fairly reasonable, that most reasonable people would look at this and go, okay, she's a good mom. He's a dad who may not have a lot of custody, but he loves his children, which I always thought he loved them. Mm-hmm. And there'd be a rational response. Well, right away, it became very, very clear that wasn't true. Like before meeting me, this special master basically said he wanted to try to move custody to my ex-husband. So then the battle began. Okay. So I ended up in a battle with this person, who I then learned that my ex-husband was paying his attorney's fees, the special master's attorney's fees. So ultimately he lost his license.
Wow.
That took years. So long story short, I was at this point living in New Hampshire. So now everything was on my side. So this person had to fly to New Hampshire. This person had to, and they were pursuing me because they had been told that I had these great buckets of wealth, I guess, buried in my basement.
Okay.
And what I realized a few years into this was, wait a minute, I could just file bankruptcy again.
Oh, okay.
And the truth is, you could pretty much file it every 3 years. There's parameters and other things. And I was like, I'm going to file bankruptcy again. Mm-hmm. And it's, I call it getting a turnip. There's no money here. You can bang all you want on the door. There's no money here. So I did that. I was in a position in my life where the relationship that I was in, my boyfriend at the time had wanted us to move in, and we did. I was in a very high pressure, high level job. He wanted me to take some time off from that. So I did. It was like, I was selling the house and I thought I could just do this again. I mean, I don't need that much money to get through. Mm-hmm. So I did it again. And again, it was a strategic move. Didn't feel great about it. I hadn't even finished the first 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I was still in the throes of what the first bankruptcy had done. So I did that. And again, it did work, because I just made it clear, like, you can sue me all you want, and I can do this every 3 years. And at this point, what does it matter? I mean, what am I have to be afraid of? Right. Losing all my credit, not having any money? I mean, please, I've already done that twice. So I wasn't that scared.
I got you. So then what motivated you to, begin your journey of entrepreneurship? Like what was that thing that said, you know what, I don't have to work this high pressure 9-to-5 sales job now. And I've already been through bankruptcy twice. Okay, what's that thing that said to you, hey, let me try doing this something different?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I hear contractors. No, that's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
If it's really bad, we can pause and I can go to another room. But
no, it's okay.
You just
I can hear you. Okay, can you hear me fine? I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I can.
We're good. Go ahead.
Well, that relationship that I was in for a long period of time. And what I had done was I had gone from the frying pan into the fire. I had turned my entire emotional, financial well-being over to someone else. Mm-hmm. And when that relationship ended, I found myself again with no car, no job, no place to live, and completely flat broke and without a job. I did go back into sales because sales is a great job. And it's one of the few jobs where you just doesn't matter what your gender is, you can make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. but I also knew I had also been fired from jobs. So really that was like your whole life can be upended.
Mm-hmm.
And that can happen at any point. So I knew that I was going to keep my job, but I had to build other things that were going to help me have stability.
Yeah.
And for me, that the beginning was real estate.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. That's really good. And so, uh, what kept you motivated, to pursue the real estate investing, once you kind of started considering all the stuff that was going on around you in terms of, some people would look at your two bankruptcies and say, wow, she's a big failure. And so, and like you said earlier, the shame of it and all, the embarrassment of it. So what was the thing that kind of kept you going?
Honestly, I think this is a skill. Maybe it's from being in sales, or maybe it's youngest of six. But when people tell me no, I mean, it just makes me go even harder. I
Okay.
almost feel like, thanks for telling me no, because now I'm definitely going to prove you wrong.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
there is some of that. I call it acting as if. It's not really fake it till you make it, but
Hmm.
kind of telling yourself like there's no reason
Hmm.
that I can't be as successful. I can't learn something that someone else is doing.
Hmm.
There is nothing on this planet that I can't learn if I
Hmm.
put my mind to it. But
Great.
one of the key factors truly was finding my tribe. So for me in Nashville, that meant finding it's a group called the Real Estate Investors of Nashville. And I
Hmm.
owe a huge debt of gratitude to that group, because it was the first time I walked in. And again, this is a very large group, mostly men. Um, but for the first time, people were speaking a language that really excited me.
Hmm.
At first, I didn't understand it. It would be like walking into a room of lawyers and having you all
Hmm.
use legal terms and having no idea what it meant. But I was excited because I knew I could get there, and I
Okay.
saw people, all colors, all walks of life, young, old, whatever, doing different kinds of real estate, and realizing I just need to take the time and understand where I can make a move in this. And it's like I always say, you need to be swimming in the right pool. Once you know you're swimming in the right pool, at least you're in the right pool, right? And you can go from there, right? You could figure it out from there. So that was so motivating because it's a totally different mind shift. I still had my day job,
Hmm.
but I was surrounded by these people who were doing it,
Hmm.
and some of them started with absolutely nothing.
Right.
So I just really felt that if I continued to surround myself with folks like that, continue to understand myself
Hmm.
and what I was comfortable with, I
Hmm.
would eventually find a way to create another stream of income.
Okay. So when you started your real estate investing, gig, so to speak, you were still working your full-time job?
Oh, yes. I worked my full time job until November 28th of 2018. So,
Hmm.
yes.
Okay. Okay. And did you find that having that full-time job really just gave you a level of comfort in knowing that you had that income coming in, but you were also pursuing something that you could do without being employed?
Yes. I think that, well, first of all, I always had to have a job because I had to provide insurance for my children.
Oh.
So,
Mhm.
that was something that was ordered by the court, was that my ex-husband would provide insurance. He never did. And for anybody out there who's been through a divorce, you can spend a whole bunch of money in court, or you could just
Mhm.
do it yourself. And
Right.
so
Mhm.
I had to keep the children insured, myself insured. So that was a big portion of it. And that's a big portion of the American dilemma as well. Um, and the other, having a full-time job as well did a couple of things. It gave me vehicles that I didn't know how to use yet.
Mhm.
So I didn't realize that I could borrow against my 401k without taxes or penalty. So I
Mhm.
borrowed against my 401k and I
Mhm.
paid off my car. I
Mhm.
borrowed again and I bought a house. I borrowed again and I bought a house, because I bought those
Wow.
houses with 3% down, which I
Okay.
also didn't know I could do.
Mhm. Mhm. And you did that
So,
through using your 401k,
yep.
right?
So
Okay,
some of these
great.
houses I was borrowing like $17,000 and buying a house. Like, you don't have to have 20% down if you're willing to move, which is
Mhm.
what I did. Um, So I learned about using my HSA, having the flexibility to invest with that as well. Some of these tax strategies that I hadn't known before. So that was really key. And loading up a 401k, which I ultimately, for example, I left a company and I ultimately converted that 401k into a vehicle that allowed me to buy property. So again, another vehicle that I had no idea about until I joined this real estate investor group.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Well, what they just tag them for short as RIAs. And there is a national organization, a national RIA that the one that you were involved in probably was tied into that, because I'm a member of one in this area where I live at as well. And you're right, they do provide a lot of great information, things that I know that I wouldn't have known had it not been for that group. So now also you have this little this rule that you have called the 10-10-10 rule. Can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure. I have used this my entire life, mostly in crisis, whenever I'm in crisis, but it doesn't have to be that way. But in a crisis, could be anything. You lose your job, your kids aren't speaking to you, your marriage is breaking up, whatever it is. But I found that usually when I'm in crisis, that it's very hard to look at the entire picture because it's so overwhelming. So I just started with 10-10-10. Like literally, I remember when I was going through my divorce and the children were really little, I just thought, what can I do in the next 10 minutes? And I mean, my two babies were in diapers. So, the next 10 minutes, oh, the baby needs to be changed, or I need to eat. What can I do in the next 10 hours, which is a day, really? What can I accomplish in this day? And make it realistic. And then 10 days, and then 10 weeks, and then 10 months. But when I'm really in crisis, I really can only make it through the first 10. Right.
Okay.
So,
The first 10 minutes.
10 minutes, 10 hours, and 10 days. I could probably make it that far, but that really helps. It's kind of like eating an elephant one bite at a time, right? So, you don't have to solve the problem all at once. Sometimes what you need right now is to talk to a friend, eat something, take a nap, take a shower. If anybody listening knows what it's like to truly be in crisis, and most of us have suffered through a divorce at some point in our lives, it's devastating. It's absolutely debilitating, emotionally, let alone once you add the financial part of it into it. So I just developed that rule to kind of slow myself down and think about things in small chunks that I can absorb at one time.
Okay, great. By the way, how old are your children now?
My adults are 24 and 26, and I have two grandbabies that are 4.5 and 2.5.
Okay, great, grandmom.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun. I love my grandkids. They're fun because you can hang out with them, then you can give them back to mom and dad.
It's the best. I would have skipped parenting just to get to this. So awesome.
I love that. That's great. So tell us now, what are you involved in now, Jennifer?
Well, my story is I chose to do short-term rental ultimately. So I ended up ultimately with 3 houses here in Nashville, Tennessee, but I got into it early, very early. People thought I was crazy that I was letting other people stay in my house. And I had never heard of it before either. But
excuse me, just for 1 second. So when you say short-term rentals, you're talking more about like an Airbnb situation, correct?
Exactly. Airbnb, VRBO, exactly.
Okay.
And so that was hugely profitable. I mean, that changed my life. And so I just kept doing it, rinse, repeat. And the way I did it was I kept moving into the houses because I had that ability to do it. My kids had grown up and I was able just to go on my own and move into these houses. And I detail that in my podcast if anybody wants to listen to it.
Oh, definitely going to promote that at the end of this podcast.
But, I think one of the important things about building, stability or empires or whatever you want to call it is is knowing that it's okay to pivot. One of the mistakes I see people make all the time, and this is part about the 10-10-10 rule, is the first thing they do is try to cling to what they have. So short-term rental blew up here in Nashville, Tennessee, Airbnb. Like, it became a huge center for tourism and everybody got in on the game.
Oh, wow.
So all of a sudden I went from having, oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Keep going.
Okay. All of a sudden I went from having these hugely profitable houses to competing with places that had, rooftop decks and, elevators and just things that I was never going to compete with. And my profits started to go down. Okay. And I watched that for about a year. And then I decided I'm out, and I sold all of them 30 days before COVID hit. And COVID has had a huge effect on Airbnb.
Yes.
So
perfect timing.
Yes. And I saw the folks around me, all the people in the Airbnb community around me kind of going, it'll come back. And some of them, it is coming back, and they're dealing with that. But the ability to pivot and to shift, I think, is really important. So I liquidated all of that, and thank God, because even surviving it, I mean, my carrying cost was $7,000 a month. I would have been a mess.
Right.
But we now we have apartment complexes. So invested in an apartment complex in Manchester, Tennessee, about an hour from here, 51 doors. And then also in a joint venture of 67 doors in Knoxville. Now, those are, for me, those are actually small investments. They're huge properties. They're a lot, but I mean, I guess that's the point of why I call the show Micro Empires. I didn't put in all of money. I actually put in a small amount of money, and it wasn't like I had a giant checkbook full of money. I used a vehicle like a self-directed IRA to purchase them. And now I'm in the process of considering investment in some companies. I want to do some angel investing. I also invested in a company called Third Home, which gives us membership to it. It allows us to travel all over the world and stay in luxury properties. So that's what I'm doing. But I'm mostly interested in investments that I mostly focus on investments that cash flow. I say everybody has to be on the payroll. Everybody has to work.
That's great. I love it. And so also, tell us about the Micro Empires.
So I started Micro Empires because I wanted to share my story, obviously, but it wasn't just about me. It was that I really started to get angry as the more I discovered, the more I learned. I was like, why is this a secret? It's not really a secret, but it's not readily available. Your 401k manager at your office is never going to tell you about a self-directed IRA.
True.
Because they probably don't do it themselves. And there are lots of other vehicles besides that that you can use. So it really took a lot of digging. They don't make it readily, at least not to me. I didn't readily understand that I could borrow against it to pay off debts and then pay it back. So I'm really paying myself back.
Exactly.
But with interest, but a really low interest. So all of a sudden, like, my car note was gone. And, that is a exponentially huge savings. So I really did to be able to do that. So in our show, we cover the self-directed IRA, we cover house hacking, we cover short-term rental. I mean, these are all real estate related, but we also cover storage, just everything from what money means to you. I talk a lot about money culture. I talk about money and faith. I interviewed someone the other day, John Manis, and I know him, and we were interviewing about self-storage, which is something that I'm considering investing in very soon here. But I never expected the story that came out of him, which is that he was living the six-figure life, living well above his means. He was very unhappy. And ultimately, what changed his trajectory was he was suicidal. And I think that we don't pay enough attention to how much money and our happiness are tied, whether it's a lot of money or not having a lot of money. Much more important to understand. So I've loved the trajectory of the show because it's taken me through the personal journeys of some people who who've made millions and some people that are just kind of trudging along and some people that are just getting started. And the goal is to give tools that every episode you listen to, you can walk away and say, all right, I can use that. I could do one thing to move the needle in my direction, especially folks that are 9 to 5 commuting every day, or, like I was a 9 to 5, I had a good job at a good company and I was miserable. I really was. and I stayed in it for 3 reasons: the money, the money, the money. And there comes a time when there's a lot more important things other than money.
Well, that really is the focus of this show, to really encourage people who are entrepreneurs or who want to be entrepreneurs to, kind of really think about this thing and say, if you want some financial freedom, and if, you just want some freedom from that structured 9 to 5 type thing, try it out. Maybe there's something that that you're really passionate about that you can do and you can make money from it. I'm hoping that, that message resonates with the people who are hopefully my core audience as I move forward. So at the end of my presentations here, I always want my listeners to come away with 3 takeaways. So what are 3 takeaways that you would give my people out there so that they can, as you just said earlier, progress, they'll go in the direction of wanting to be, more successful in whatever it is they're doing?
Well, I think that a lot of folks that I talk to, it really comes down to brass tacks. How can I get started? How can I begin? And the things that I'm talking about sound so advanced, and they aren't. And it wasn't that long ago that I was just learning them for the very first time. So I think the first thing I always tell people to do is just to assess where you are, right? So, how much, a lot of folks that I talk to can't tell me what's in their 401k, how much their mortgage is, how much they owe on it, what the interest rate is on their credit cards. So, for a lot of people, that's scary. It takes bravery just to do that or to open the bills. But I do think that assessing and knowing exactly where you are, which is, it gives you power. And usually it's not as bad as you think it is if you think it's bad. But I talk to people that are like, oh yeah, I have a 401k from a job I had 10 years ago. I don't even know what's in it or how much it is. That is a gold mine. That could be purchased apartment complex for you, for all you know. So assess, that would be number 1. Number 2 is ask. So there's a book called Women Don't Ask that I think everybody should read, and it lays out all the science behind it. But I will tell you this: asking is a muscle and you have to work on it. Have worked on my asking muscle so much that sometimes I'm embarrassed about the things that I ask for.
Never be embarrassed.
I'll tell you, I think I get a 90% hit rate for the things I ask for. So just getting in once you assess where you are and you think, all right, well, I think I want to move ahead with this. Well, then your next step is going to be surrounding yourself with the right people so you can be in the right pool. You're going to have to ask to follow, ask to listen, ask to help, ask to meet, do all of that. And then finally is acting, probably just taking the step. So too many folks overanalyze, overthink, as opposed to just doing it. And even with this podcast, right? So, there used to be a time where I would prepare, for days in advance, and even with my own podcast. And instead, it's just really about taking the step, and even if it's failing, you're failing forward no matter what, because you're going to learn. So those would be my 3 things. And I have a little booklet on my website that they can download that kind of walks people through that thought process, and it's free.
Well, tell us about your podcast and your website. Tell us how we can get in touch with you.
So my website is www.micro-empires.com. You can email me directly at jennifer@micro-empires.com. I'm on all the socials, either in Micro Empires or under my name. I'm sort of, middle-aged woman, right? So I'm not great. I'm not great at the Twitter, but I'm kind of figuring it out. And, my goal in life is not to be a famous podcaster. It's to provide great content. And I'm not financially independent. I'm still building this. So it's just really sharing that dream. So I have communities. I'm going to be doing some group coaching and some 30-day, sort of getting started offerings coming up here in 2021, because that's, I think, what people are asking me the most. So
Okay.
I'm waiting. I'm still learning. So I love when people reach out like you did, because I'm still learning for people. What do they really need? Because I don't
Hmm.
want to waste my time or your time, anybody's time.
Hmm.
So those are the best ways to reach out to me.
Great. And when and where can we hear your podcast?
So it's everywhere you get podcasts.
Mhm.
If you subscribe on Apple Podcasts and leave a rate and review, I would really, really, really appreciate it.
Okay.
They drop on Tuesdays at 11 Central,
Hmm.
and they're weekly.
Great.
And they're between 30 minutes to 45 minutes long, I'd say.
Hmm.
Some of my solo episodes are shorter. So
Hmm.
it's a quick listen. And again, the goal is just to come away with something that you can do that day.
Great. Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. I was so excited to have you on the show, and you've just given us such great information, motivation, with your story. It's a great story, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to hear it and maybe emulate some of the things that you've done, because the whole pivot and resilience thing, I think you epitomize that. It's
Oh,
great. It's
oh,
great.
thank you very much. And Vera, it's such an honor to be here. And I really appreciate you asking me to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. Can't wait to see this episode and hear it, because I'm in it now, so I'm not really listening like I would want to. And I hope everybody else can hear it and enjoy it just as much as I have to be interviewing you. Take good care, and I hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Vera. Bye bye.
Thank you, Jennifer. Bye bye.